Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, for episode number 177, I think. The 176 got pulled because I mentioned we talked about the Twisted Sister clip, and Google blocked it in a bunch of countries, and I argued, hey, this is fair use. I'm talking about the thing. I credited on the screen. I didn't use any of the music. Haven't heard back from them yet, so I don't know what's going on with that. I do know that with 100,000 YouTube subscribers, seems odd that latest Firewall did 14,000 views in a week or something like that. I don't know what the status of the Prager lawsuit is. I get the feeling that they wouldn't have filed the suit if they didn't feel like there's a pretty strong claim. I don't know anything about the law in that kind of detail, other than to say that if they win, then I don't know. I just think there should be just a class action lawsuit brought by a bunch of people. So anyway, I've had better weeks. This time last week I was in Chicago trying to do a little good, and I bet that was a bit of a shock for me. I don't really know what else to say about it at this point. It's coming from your own team. It's my first thought was it just seemed to add so much credibility to this thing. You know, when somebody on your own team is basically saying, well, we don't want to be seen with you. We're going to wash our hands of you because of your horrible racism. The whole thing basically came from Media Matters, which gets paid millions, if not billions of dollars by George Soros to go through pretty much everything they can find and to do things like this kind of character assassination. We're going through everything that I said on, not just on the Molyneux interview, but on the one that I thought he was talking about. We're looking at all of them. I went through the transcript of the one where we talked about race and IQ there, and I didn't see a lot of the quotes, so it's possible that there's stuff on someone on other episodes. We're looking into those. Tell you what I did see though. I saw paragraph after paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of statements that are essentially just exactly to the opposite of what they said I said. Furthermore, I suspect I'm going to make sure that everything that they put in direct quotes was a direct quote. But the one thing that is without question is the fact that when Media Matters put together that list of these things that I said in such a way to make me sound like such a white supremacist, they had to skip over huge amounts of stuff where I say basically just the opposite. The thrust of it is, in a nutshell, is that the Media Matters cut and the campaign's reaction and everybody else's reaction, because it's a fun thing to wake up one morning and see 6 Google pages of your name in the Charlotte newspaper, the Chicago Tribune, Los Angeles Times, being called a white supremacist with the same cut and paste article in all of them. That's a different point, but it's another point. You know, you would think that before you could make an accusation like that, you might at least want to give me a call. You would just think that if you were a reporter for a newspaper, you would at least give me a call. You know, then I could explain to you exactly how I feel about all these things. But that doesn't happen. It didn't happen. So, Anyway, a couple things I'll say about this, and I guess we'll move on. First of all, I do all my thinking out loud. That's my job. I think out loud, and I talk about the things that I'm thinking about. And this used to be called a free country. And the idea was that you could discuss ideas. You could discuss ideas that you didn't particularly believe in. You could discuss ideas that maybe you didn't want to believe in. And you could weigh evidence. It's interesting to me. It's not going to be much consolation to anybody else. But I find it very interesting that just a couple of episodes of the Stratosphere Lounge ago, I said, I just read some evidence. It was very compelling. I thought that Edward de Vere, 16th Earl of Oxford, was the person who actually wrote Shakespeare's plays. And then I read the other side of the argument and don't believe that anymore. So even that particular article, at least the interview I think we're talking about, we were specifically talking about the bell curve. Now, there's a lot of evidence of the bell curve. And here's my position on this. What I find is that from the beginning, throughout my entire career of doing this, and as recently as my last appearance, at least in Irvine, I'm pretty sure I said something even better in TPUSA down in Palm Beach, from the beginning, I must have said, I don't know, 20 times in public and on camera, that Booker T. Washington and the Tuskegee Institute is evidence that this entire idea of racial inferiority is just not true, because he held his students to higher standards. I've said 20 times on camera that the Tuskegee students were not only had better grades than the white average, but they also had a higher legitimacy rate. I've said out loud several times that they not only were smarter, they were also better people. And finally, I forget which one it is. I've seen it, I've heard it, and I'm going to use it, needless to say, in my rebuttal, which is going to come when I get all this stuff collated. But one of these episodes or something I remember saying, and I've seen the transcript, I know it was there. I said, if we had listened to Booker T. Washington on this instead of W.E.B. Du Bois, then we would look at black people in America today like a priesthood. And people would go up to them on the street and say, can you translate this Latin phrase for me? Or can you give me some investment advice? Or my daughter is slipping into drug abuse. What do I do about that? So I think that if Media Matters has gone to the trouble to look at everything I've said, by the way, everything they talked about, everything that was in the memo, everything that the Ives campaign saw, all of it was according to the memo that they saw. One interview that I did with Stefan Molyneux, and just that alone for a second, it's the kind of thing that nobody seems to think about. I probably have 5,000 hours of me speaking extemporaneously on camera. I certainly have 2,000 or 3,000 hours, no question about that. I find it interesting that out of 5,000 hours of discussing things off script without a teleprompter, that all of this evidence comes from one interview. I find that actually quite interesting. And furthermore, what am I trying to say here? I spoke to somebody about this, somebody I admire very much, and basically what he said was, you're shocked by this and you're beat up by this because you could not imagine doing this to anybody. And I said, no, I couldn't. He said, you don't understand that you're arguing with people, you're in a fight to death with people who have no sense of honor, no sense of integrity, no sense of fairness, nothing. If I'd written something about somebody, I thought I had really great evidence that somebody was a terribly cruel person, and somebody I hated, somebody like Michael Moore, and personal cruelty stories, and then I found out that Michael Moore worked in a women's shelter every night at the end of his shift and had done things for animal rescue and so on. There's no way I would have gone with that. If I'd seen any kind of exculpatory evidence or anything like that, then somebody with any character and integrity simply says, oh, okay, no. But there is so much stuff that they had to overlook, primarily again and 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 again. Tuskegee Institute. I remember the way the memo was worded, and certainly the way that the Ives campaign issued their statement. It made it. They basically said that I said that blacks were lazy and unemployable. When what I said was the culture of dependency has made them unemployable. And when I said dependency makes you lazy, the next thing I said was, and I ought to know, because when I was dependent on my friends for a year, I was lazy and angry. And when they decided to cut off this help, I was furious. It was the most embarrassing thing I've ever done. And I find it a little odd that someone who's trying to make me out to be a white supremacist and who says that black people are lazy follows that sentence immediately by saying, I ought to know about this dynamic because I was lazy too when I was dependent. So, and what it does is, this is the hard part, this is the part that's really, this is the part that is just so hard. Kirsten said, just shrug it off. I can't shrug it off. I'd love to tell you I could shrug it off. I suppose there are people that do shrug it off. I don't shrug it off. I'd like to. Natasha's helped me so much in these last couple days. I just think I would have gone barking mad without her, honestly. But the thing about it is, I guess maybe this is just a sign of, character or something. But when you read this kind of thing, I don't know if it's true for other people. I'll tell you what I was thinking. I was thinking, well, it's going to sound strange to you, but this is exactly what goes through my mind. Was, well, is it true? Am I really a racist? Is this really what I said? Is this fair? Is this what I've become? And I was telling Natasha for the first 24 hours after that, I was telling her that that I was so reassured by reading my own transcripts. I know that's a strange thing to say, but it's absolutely true. When I got a chance to read what I had said on this issue and see all the other times I'd said things about it and so on, when I got to read that line that I wrote about the looking at black Americans as a priesthood if they'd been held to the standard that Booker T. Washington held for them, it was a relief. It was a relief to me. Because, it's just such a horrible thing to go through. You really start to question your own sanity on this. And look, thank you for all the kind words in the comment section. Thank you for all the support. Needless to say, this whole time we're not going anywhere. But there is an element about this. I'm going to look into legal action. Needless to say, Eric, thank you to a few other people. We're going to check into that. So I think I have a pretty decent case. But in any event, whether I do or not, I mean to make this a national story, and I'm going to get my armor on, and I'm going to get my weapons handy before I do that, which means that I am going to whether or not it's a legal issue or not, I am going to be so armed and so prepared for this that it's going to be something that I'm going to try and get on Hannity about and Tucker Carlson and all the rest, because this is how it works. And by the way, it is unbelievably effective. And as I've said before, the left is not destroying this country through guns. We're all ammoed up, and we always believed that tyranny was, going to come with government tanks and guns and bullets and, just like in Nazi Germany. But it's not. It's coming through this. So for people of conscience, it's hard. And I think this may be one of the points I've been making since I started doing this. This charge of racism only works against people who aren't racist. And I've said it here 100 times. I've said it on the road 100 times. It doesn't matter how many times I've said it. When you wake up and see your name in your home city's newspaper, it's brutal. There's a lot of things about this. One of the people I have such admiration for, one of many people I have admiration for, is Antonia Okafor. On some level, I think black conservatives or gay conservatives or women conservatives have it harder even than this, because it's terrible to be accused of something unjustly. It's just terrible. But worse than that, I think, is for people like Antonia and Alfonso Rach and all the rest, they not only get all this, but they also get the whole Uncle Tom race traitor kind of, you're not a real black person either. They've got to feel so left out and alone up there. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to basically, I could do hours and hours and hours of just me saying the exact opposite. I'll put a couple of quick little bites together. Just, I'm just going to say higher test scores, higher test scores, higher test scores, higher test scores, cut. I'm going to point out that in order to make this document that got emailed, you have to wade through an awful lot of higher test scores. And thank you again for all the kind comments, Troy and everybody else. And then I'm going to say, basically, so why would you wade past all these comments and things? And the answer is, because it works. And then I would like to, I haven't asked them yet, but what I think I would like to do, your first instinct is to get like, what's the word I'm looking for? Testimonials, and that's exactly the weakest thing to do. It's like, I can't be racist. I have a lot of black friends. Well, I'm not talking about black friends. I'm talking about black conservatives that I admire, who we've talked about this particular specific issue with before. But then I realized actually better approach is to make sure that it doesn't look too defensive and personalized. And basically what I'd like to do, if I can, if they'll do it for me, is get in touch with Antonia and Zoe and Candace Owens, and also my memory's just a little left today. What's his name? Chadwick, the gay conservative, and a couple of outspoken women, chicks on the right, that kind of thing, Diamond and Silk. And I want to just ask them 2 questions on camera. I want to say, what's the worst thing they've ever said about you? And then the second thing I'll say is, why do you think they said it? And I really think that's the core of it. But what I was going to say earlier, and look, it's just quite psychologically shocking, and I have to fight back on this very hard, because whether I like it or not, whether you like it or not, this is never going away. It's never going to go away. There will always be people that will be holding this up wherever I go. And I'm going to have to just constantly deal with it. By the way, Troy points out that pointing out the black grains of sand, and that's exactly the argument I'm going to use. I'll get to that in 1 second. Thank you. But, it would be nice to have a document saying, well, next time somebody calls me this, I can say, here's a retraction. And I got to tell you, I don't care if it's on the 14th page. A retraction is a retraction. In any event, I don't know the details of all that. I'm looking into it. I'm going to have a meeting right after Stratosphere Lounge tonight about this. But I think it would help hearing from a bunch of other people some of the slander, I think it would make, especially if it becomes clear that, this lands. And here's the final thing that I just don't know really exactly what to deal with. I could go and stand up in a room full of social justice warriors and basically say, listen, it's not a question of being quoted out of context in the interview. The entire interview is out of context for my entire career before and after the interview. So I can stand there and make this case and tell them, look, you don't get to tell me how I feel. But what the response, I can tell what the response will be is, oh, you're caught. See, now you're caught and you're just trying to backpedal. And this is the thing I don't understand. With somebody like Harvey Weinstein, for example, this was a secret. I mean, he was he and a bunch, and all the rest of these progressive moral standards, he was intimidating people into silence about something he knew was completely wrong. And I am not being quiet about any of this. So the argument is, well, now you've been caught. And so you're backpedaling. And you're just trying to prove something that you're not in order to get away with it. And this is where I kind of just don't know what to say, because I don't understand their argument. Doesn't mean, well, what else is new, right? But basically, what are you saying? Are you saying that the best way for me to get my racist message out is for me to constantly insist that I'm not a racist? Is that essentially what you're saying? Because it sounds like what you're saying, and it is what they're saying. So basically, they're saying the fact that you're denying it means you are it. And you know, I don't know what you do with that. I generally don't know what to do with that just yet. Other than to say, well then, it must be that all of this progressive social justice warrior work you're doing is because you want to become a top corporate executive at an oil company. And this is the way that you provide cover in order to achieve that. You know, if I'm out there influencing people, that's what I try to do. I do know I never made the statement that white people are superior to black people. I know I never made it because I never thought it. And if you're going to accuse the Democratic Party of being the largest slaveholders in the history of the world, my feeling about the bell curve and the discussion with Stefan Milneau, who believes in this stuff much more strongly than I do, my feeling was, you can make an accusation like that, which I did and have. You better be able to back it up and look at the other side. In other words, if you're going to accuse the Democrats of causing this catastrophe and progressive policies, which I've done and continue to do, then you have to, at least I think, in fairness, myself, just for my own internal fairness, I feel like I have to examine everything about it. Is that in fact it? Is that it? Is it something else? And like I said, I saw a lot of stuff in the bell curve, and a lot of the stuff in the bell curve is well-sourced. I've seen a lot of other things that are well-sourced. And the first thing I learned about debate, in 11th grade was that I could be, when I was in debate, I found out that you could get endless supplies of experts saying factual data that this was true. And then 10 minutes later in the next classroom, I could pull out another 20 or 30 experts saying the exact same fact was false. It was a real wake-up call for me. You're sitting there in the if you're doing the affirmative case, you're saying that that capital punishment deters crime, and then the next room you're negative, and you have to say that capital punishment doesn't deter crime, and that was so amazing to me to be able to find just ranks and ranks and ranks of people experts, by the way, in the field, making these declarative statements. This is true, 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 and here's a bunch of people saying false, 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 false. And as we've discussed many times on this show, it leaves you in a place where you have to weigh evidence. You have to weigh evidence. I thought the whole thing with Edward de Vere was a really great example of that. It was a fun example for me because the initial case for the evidence on the Earl of Oxford was strong. It looked strong anyway. You put it together in such a way it looks strong. And then next thing you know, you read the other side of the case and realize, well, that's probably stronger. But I think the thing that is most striking to me is no matter where I was going with this and no matter what I was doing or thinking about or trying to come to a decision about, the one thing that I never ever changed, because this is what I believe as opposed to what I read, I never ever stopped talking about the Tuskegee Institute and the pride that I felt as an American in the evidence that this racial superiority thing's just it's just bullshit. I don't know what to say other than that, but we'll see. But I do need to. I need to go as far with this as I can. I've heard a couple people have actually proposed this or tried to do it, but I think it would be great and important for there to be a legal defense fund of real money, and and just go after these people and just sue them for huge sums of money. Even sue them for the retraction. It's just so low. It's so underhanded, and it works, It works. Yeah. Anyway, as I said, I think one of the things that's most strongly, one of the things that I just kind of hang on to the most, because it's a hard thing, is, and by the way, shouldn't I be excited and happy about this? I mean, if I'm a white supremacist, shouldn't this be something I'm celebrating now that everybody's finally heard my opinions about this? Why would I be so upset about this if it were true? I forgot what I was going to say. Oh well, I forgot. In any event, it'll come back to me. But yeah, anyway, it's been a rough week, and thank God for my wife, and also thank God for some of the super incredible, extraordinary people who stood with me through this whole thing, and they will get their name credit when the time comes. But I mean, people who were involved with this on the ground level as it was happening were just super. I mean, they just never, ever wavered for a second, despite the fact they were hearing things like, what kind of people do you associate with, So, anyway, let's have a look at the questions. Okay. By the way, I guess you saw the Facebook post. I tried to post the same thing I've posted every single time for the last 6 years, 7 years, whatever it's been. The Stratosphere Lounge banner, and see you tonight at 9 and 6, and Facebook wouldn't let me post it. I got that warning that I posted in the comments section. We figured a workaround, but I posted. Well, here's what I wrote. Thanks to so many of you for the kind support over the last several days. Needless to say, we'll respond when we are fully prepared to respond. Meanwhile, I'm happy to talk about recent events or anything else for that matter tonight at 9 ET 6 PT, Stratosphere Lounge, logo, publish. And up comes a box from Facebook saying, your post isn't published yet. Before your post is published, Undefined must confirm that they have branded content partnership with you. They'll be able to see this post before deciding whether to approve your page. Never seen that before. These guys are all in now, folks. And yeah, we have this window with Donald Trump, and I just never thought. I just never, ever imagined I would see this in this country. I just never did. And that's one of the reasons why the whole Falcon Heavy launch made me so happy. It was nice to be proud of my country the way I was my entire life until you start seeing this happening. And at the highest levels. I mean, the FBI, the Treasury Department, Office of the President, Secretary of State, this giant conspiracy of destruction in this news media, just if for no other reason, just as one specific. I know you guys don't need any evidence, but I mean, you would think that even if you accepted Comey's, the FBI Director Comey's recommendation to not press charges against Hillary Clinton, even if you were a leftist and you bought that, what? Would you not be at all interested in the fact that the FBI director has basically said that at the very least, the statement she made, I did not post any classified information, I didn't know any of it was classified. You would not, as a newspaper person, you would not want to follow up on those questions? They are very, 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 very evil people. They're not just people we disagree with. They're people without any sense of forget honor or integrity or anything like that. These are people that must have, and I'll just close with this. I've said it before. I'll say it again. These are people who must have waded through scores, if not hundreds, of statements that I made in in direct contravention of what they accused me of, and nevertheless had the nerve to go in there and do that. And if we don't have the means to brush these people back off of this, then I don't know what to say, because it really is then just a matter of time. And I mean that in a way that everybody watching this should personalize. I don't mean it in a philosophical way anymore. I don't mean like in this kind of vague sense of the future of the country and this sort of, kind of low-level dread that things are just turning off. This is a dark, terrible, terrible catastrophe. I would just advise you, for the sake of your own motivation, to personalize this and to understand that if somebody had access to everything that you'd said over the last 5 or 6 years, because I do this on camera, and I'll get to that in a second, and understand that anybody can put together any story they want to with that many data points. It's the example, I used it before and somebody mentioned it earlier about the sand. I used this first with Michael Moore back in the eject days, talking about how you can make a point out of anything. And it's a superb argument, if I do say so myself, and it basically works like this. When I was confronted about this, they said, "Did you say this?" I said, "Well, I said this, yes, but I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Did you say that inner city blacks were unemployed and unemployable?" I said, "I did say that because it's true. They are unemployed and unemployable. And the reason they're unemployed and unemployable is because of this. This is the intention. This is the policy that's intended to. This is what you want. You want these people who are dependent on you, and you have to convince them that the Republicans are even worse." And they basically wanted me to either retract it, or they said, "Do you want to say that maybe this wasn't artfully worded?" And I was ready to go with that for a second. That artfully worded, I was never going to apologize. I had nothing to apologize for. But I was almost ready to say, "Okay, well, inartfully worded, okay." And then I realized, you know what? Honestly, you cannot think and have a discussion. You cannot be a free person and use your mind and weigh alternatives if you are constantly measuring every single syllable you say to see if the most easily offended person in the country at some point in the future might decide to make a crusade out of this. So I don't know how many of these things were direct quotes. I'm beginning to suspect that look, if I find any cases where that memo that was sent out by a blogger, by the way, not Huffington Post or anything, a blogger, when that memo was sent out, if I find anything in that memo that has me in quotation marks and I didn't say that, I think we got a pretty strong case there in any event. The argument, the sand argument, which is the whole argument, as I said about Michael Moore back in, I want to say 2005 or something, Bowling for Columbine, somewhere around there. If you stand on the cliffs of Malibu and look down at the beach, you see the white beaches of Malibu. It's a kind of a very pale yellow. It's a light tan, but the beach, it's a white beach. And the sand is white. And if you go down into the sand and just sit there and you hold a handful of sand right up in front of your face, you'll notice that the sand is white and somewhat clear, but mostly white. But interspersed with all of these white grains, there is an odd grain of very dark material, which was one of the rocks that was crushed or whatever the case may be. But you hold up a handful of sand, and you'll see that virtually all of it's this kind of light tan, but there are little dark specks in there, pieces of sand from the beach. And so if I were to sit there with a pair of tweezers and a magnifying glass, and I was to pull out all of the dark particles only and put them in a bucket, and if I were to do this for a while, I would be able to say in front of groups of people, look at the sand from the black beaches of Malibu. Look at this sand from Malibu. And people would say, and you would say to this guy, and he could say with truth, with factual accuracy, yes, these are in fact from the beaches of Malibu. You can see how this is the sand that I got off of the beach at Malibu. And you'd be telling the truth. But you'd be lying through your teeth. And so, yeah. Kirsten again says, now I experience how living under the commies in East Germany and Russia was. Yes, Kirsten, I do. And if we don't do something about this, then you will too. And we all will. because then it's just, as I say, it's a matter of time. They accuse you of something. They have no evidence for it. They make you defend yourself. I've got a situation that's currently brewing, and I haven't made a decision yet. I'm going to talk with Natasha, sleep on it a little bit. But basically, I'm going to defend myself in the way that I am best at defending myself. I'm going to do it with words, and especially I'm going to do it with my own words spoken both before and after these accusations are made. But as far as going to college campuses and stuff and facing these vicious, small-minded, smug, stupid people, I don't feel any obligation whatsoever to go out there and to defend myself against this from those people. I need to do it, and I need to do it as loudly as possible. But to go and stand there and argue with these people about this, I should have just called one of these college students a pedophile and said, I'm not going to be seen on the same stage as you. And then prove to me you're not. So, anyway. Some people have tried to start a legal defense fund. I don't know if it's been funded or not, but I think that whatever money is out there on the part of freedom-loving Americans, it had better get deployed quickly, because the big lie is continued to be told, and the more they lie, the more the more they do it. The final thing there it is. There's the 8th time I said the final thing, so that must mean I'm pretty close to being done. I asked these people from the campaign, I said, do you think President Trump is a racist? And they said, no. Well, he's accused of it every day. And they said they didn't think I was either, but that's what happened. So that's what happened. Anyway, yeah, I know Ben and Milo love this kind of thing, and I don't. All right, let's look at some questions here.